Okay, so now I've gone through and I have added compression on every individual track. One thing to note, I did go ahead and deactivate the snare bottom. It just sounds pretty terrible. So I'm not sure what happened with that recording, but I didn't like it, especially when I added the compression. All the bad qualities seemed to leap forward. So I went ahead and deactivated it. I didn't delete the track just so you can see it, but there it is. And you can see that for the most part, I have either used the outgoing gain, the output gain, or makeup gain, and maybe attenuated the output. That means turning it down. It's a very fancy word for turning it down, attenuate. And it's on every track. And so now it sounds quite different.
Very superstitious writings on the wall.
And I've gone back through and I've made adjustments. Like, for instance, on this vocal track, now that it's so much louder, I don't need to turn up the gain on the audio file as much as it was. So maybe instead of +7, it's +4. But the compression gives it this like solidity, right? This presence to it that it didn't have before. And so it cuts through the mix a little bit better. We don't need it to be as loud.
Writings on the wall. Very superstitious. Ladders about to fall.
Okay, now we're going to go one step further here, and we're going to consider the drums. So here I have the drums group, and it's sounding fairly balanced and punchy and bright and vibrant. Also worth noting, I did put some gates on here. I'm not going to cover how to use gates in this class. It's going to be for another level, but just so you know what it does, here is one of the tom tracks with a gate on it. So the gate opened when the instrument came in, and then the gate closed when it wasn't playing. And that cuts down on that excessive drum bleed in the tom tracks. Same thing with the vocals. When you get into this, you'll hear a lot of extra mouth noises from the singer. And so having a gate on there can eliminate those mouth noises. You just have to set the settings carefully so that you don't squash the beginnings and ends of words, especially if they're like a consonant that you don't want to lose. Let's go back to the drums here. All right, we could do a little bit more. I'm going to go to the group track itself, and I'm going to find glue compressor, and I'm going to double click it and add it onto the track. This plugin can be abused very easily. And so you just want to make sure that you're guiding yourself with your ears. So we can apply whole group processing on these group tracks. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my threshold down. You can see that this compressor is quite different. And it was covered in an earlier video. You can check that out. But what I'm going to do is bring my threshold down till I'm getting between 0 and 5 decibels of gain reduction. Maybe like 2 or 3 would be ideal. And then I'll apply the makeup gain there. And this is for the whole drum kit. I'm going to make my attack time a little faster, make my release time a little faster. And I'm going to put the ratio at something very light, like 2:1. I can kind of hear it pumping in and out. I'm going to try a longer release time. So we're getting about 4 decibels of gain reduction. Maybe up to 5. And let's A/B it. Okay, so I like that right there. I ended up bumping the ratio up to 4-to-1. And so what this is doing is just providing an extra layer of processing to the drums to make them sound more present, more in your face, a little larger than life. And so we can do that at the group level. We can do it with the keyboard, for instance. Let's unsolo the drums and solo the keyboard tracks, the group. The keyboard has a very different sound profile than the drums. I can set the release time to A for automatic. Now, what about instruments that don't have two stages, right? Well, you could put the glue compressor right on the track. For instance, the bass is not included in a group, right? So we have the utility EQ compressor. I could put the glue compressor on there. Let's hear it with the keyboard. And it has the same effect. It's just there's nothing really to glue together there because it's a single track. But it would be smart to have extra layers of compression on some of those tracks as needed sonically. And finally, we're going to go to the main track here. You may not have noticed this, but there is a main track. And I'm going to put an EQ on there, EQ8. I'm going to put a compressor on there. I'm going to put a glue compressor on, and I'm going to go down to L here and put a limiter on. This is going to be our sort of main track chain, and we're not going to use it to an extreme degree, right? This is affecting the overall mix, so any change we make is going to have a more dramatic impact than if we were just applying this to one track. So we just have to be careful. Let's turn these off, and we'll turn them on one at a time.
7 years of bad luck, with the things in your past. When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. A superstition ain't the way.
Okay, so what I did there is I just made a pretty steep cut around 25 hertz. There's really nothing usable down there, at least according to my headphones. And so we're going to cut that out. I added just a very slight bass boost, right around 100 hertz, a little below 100 hertz. I added some more high end here because we are sort of lacking that, especially if you look at the meter. The graph down there, the high end for some reason just isn't cutting through. I mean, we don't have a ton of high frequency instruments, but we have the cymbals, the keyboard, the vocals all have rich high frequency content. So we don't want those to be obscured. So I boosted that just a bit.
7 years of bad luck, with the things in your past.
And then we're going to add some compression for this. I'm going to set the ratio at 2-to-1. And we're only going to look for maybe 1 or 2 decibels of gain reduction and makeup. We don't want to stomp all over the mix and like ruin all of the dynamic contrast. That's not what we're trying to do here. I'll set this to auto.
7 years of bad luck, with the things in your past. When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer.
You can see the yellow numbers down here. That's the gain reduction meter in this window.
7 years of bad luck, with the things in your past. When you believe.
That makeup sounded pretty terrible there. Let's add the glue compressor. And again, we're just getting we're just going for 1 to 2 decibels of gain reduction. This needle shouldn't move that much at all.
7 years of bad luck. The good things and your bad. When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer.
And then I'm going to add a limiter on here. The limiter is a slightly different style of compressor. You might hear it sometimes called a brick wall limiter. This is a compressor that has like a 100-to-1 ratio, basically, or something like that. And so nothing gets through it. But what you're going to do is you're going to set the ceiling. I'll set my ceiling to negative 0.5 decibels. And then you use the input gain and the maximize control to make your track as loud as you can, I suppose, without just blitzing it and destroying the way it sounds. Easy to misuse this, use with caution, but you're not getting paid to do this, so you might as well try it out.
7 years of bad luck. The good things and your bad. When you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. A superstition ain't the way.
And then you want to take a break from your mix and go away from it and then come back to it and listen to it again with fresh ears. One thing that is very common when adding compression is that you add too much. And I can tell right now I've added a bit too much here. I'm going to take out some of these. And so the mix starts to sound a little dull. The transients sort of lose their attack and their punch. And so you don't want to do that. And you can also rebalance with the faders. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, and I'm not expecting you to be an expert mixer right now. The key here is to just have a workflow, right, that you can experiment with, and then you're going to get better. The more mixes you do, the better you get. It's going to take you like 3 years to get pretty good if you do it a lot. Okay. So, yeah, we're not winning Grammys right now. We are just experimenting.
7 years of bad luck.